Hi, welcome to our podcast. I'm Mary Abazia, and with me is Sean Wellham and Tom Spitali. And we're diving deep into some of our favorite tools, and we're using AI to really help us enhance our analysis, enhance our teaching. And the one of the tools that we love to use is called the Attractiveness Criteria. And in a little bit, I'll talk about some of my favorite things I use it for. But it really, when you have AI, it's on steroids. So, Sean, kick us off on this one. What is it, and what should we be doing?
Well, the thing with attractiveness, it's one of those measures that we ask people to rate and score how attractive a market is or a customer segment, that kind of thing. And in many ways, it's intuitive because you typically know what you like. So you maybe as a business think, yeah, we do really well with these kind of markets or this kind of end user. So we have preferences. What we try to force people to do is to think about why things are attractive. That's the essence of the tool, is to break it down into what is it about what you like that you can sort of tangibly look at and compare across markets. And that's a little bit harder, but we do pretty well with it. There's some standard frameworks out there. There's the growth rate of a market, for example. There's competitive intensity. You can look at how stable the market is. Has it been around for a long time? You can look at any pending regulatory or technological changes, and so on and so forth. You can articulate what makes something attractive and then measure your choices against those criteria. So that is one step evolved from the gut feel, which incidentally we all say frequently, never poo-poo the gut feel. It's a really important part of making decisions because your tacit knowledge is key. But we find a way to articulate it. What AI has done is it is completely dispassionate and very looks at things very objectively. Now it lacks specific knowledge, which is why we always say AI is a partner. It's not a replacement. It's a multiplier. And AI can really get into those elements of attractiveness and find some pretty strong objective ways of measuring, of giving examples. And that just gives people a lot more confidence to say, I knew I liked that market. Now I know why I like that market, and I can apply those criteria. So I think AI has taken a one of our I don't know how to describe. Not, it's not a harder tool. One of the tools that needs a little bit of a couple of goes around to get comfortable with articulating attractiveness. And AI accelerates that and then gives you a ton more options. So it's been a really powerful addition to this particular element of our class. Do you guys agree?
I agree. One thing that it's done is it's allowed us to not have to make an accommodation that we've always had to make in our workshops. When we are using the attractiveness tool against segments, we've always defined, all right, look, let's do our company's attractiveness formula and apply it to these segments. But we also have always coupled that with our ability to win. How competitive, how well do each of the segments like you? Whenever we have done the ability to win, how well do segments like you, we always get a score for our client's company and for our competitors. But the attractiveness, the sort of accommodation that we've had to make on that y-axis of that prioritizer, and this is making sense to those of you who've worked with us in the past, and maybe not to those who haven't. But for those of you who have, you're picturing this in your mind. We've always said, well, we don't have a lot of time to figure out how attractive these segments are to your competition. So assume that those segments are just as attractive to your competition as they are to you. So now you have an unequal matrix, right? You've got an ability to win or competitiveness score for you and your competitors, but the attractiveness, you're kind of assuming everybody likes these segments the same. Well, guess what AI allows you to do? You can go out to AI and say, hey, assume and study our two competitors and let's figure out how attractive they might think these segments are. And we can get that level of detail. And that's important because now we start to see opportunities more clearly. We may have some high ability to compete, ability to win with the segment, and we have a middling attractiveness, but maybe the competitors think that that's a low attractive segment. All of a sudden, that's a big opportunity for us. That segment looks a lot more viable for us because we won't be fought as hard as we go after that particular segment because that segment isn't as attractive to our competitors as it is to us, and vice versa. So that is a huge thing. To be able to do that in a workshop, to be able to do that amongst our teams, not only would take a lot more time, but a lot more preparation, right? We'd have to have every one of the teams study their competitors and get in the minds of their competitors, almost like a war game, and say,
Yeah.
how attractive do you think your competitors might think this segment is? And all of a sudden, there's just so much work to be done that it gets too unwieldy. But
Yeah.
AI
Just
can bring that information in immediately, and that's been a really cool, addition to how we can help clients kind of figure out their targeting strategies as well.
right. And really quickly, one thing that's exactly what I was saying with when you've got we say to people competitive intensity, how much of the competition banging on this segment's door or this sector's door? And that's a gut feel again. It's like, well, it's pretty hard out there. When you do what you've just said, Tom, and you can get AI to help scope attractiveness for your competitors, that's a much more accurate way of looking at competitive intensity. Because if they don't find these markets attractive, they're not going to divert resource. So they're not going to be knocking on those doors as much as elsewhere. And it's a way of taking what was once just a factor that you would consider, is this a competitively intense market or not? And now you can actually say, look, compared to our primary competitor, this is really an open door. It doesn't matter if it's not the best market; it might be the best opportunity for you
Yeah.
to make significant inroads, right?
It's huge. And it just,
Yeah.
AI can look at the way that AI does this, of course, is that it can immediately access all the information that's out there about your competitors, their annual reports, their strategies, anything that's out there, and kind of make a really informed judgment about attractiveness.
Yeah, I like that because in the past, if anyone is listening that has gone to our classes, we always said that's a master class, approach. And, really thinking about it, AI is providing master class approaches now to something and without adding a lot more time. You can get a lot more done and more robust. I like the attractiveness criteria too, because it's an alignment tool. If you're at a company and you're trying to figure out which markets to go after, the attractiveness helps you agree on what that criteria is going to be, as Sean was saying. And, personally, if you're using attractiveness, you might be looking at, buying a car or buying a house or getting a new spouse. I mean, my son and I, he was trying to figure out what college to go to, and it aligned to us. I understood why he was choosing certain things, and he understood. He didn't care, but he understood why I thought certain things were important. So it allows that communication to open up. And when we worked with medical device companies and used that attractiveness tool, it gets very contentious. You have sales that is saying, no, this is the most, because there's weights in there, of course. So you can't say all of those criteria are 2020 2020. Some things for the company based on what we're trying to achieve are more important or less important. And if you layer in using AI in terms of trends, what things should we be considering for our future that should be important? That again gives you a better way to look at what those weights should be and how as a group you should be putting more weight maybe on something that there's a group that's growing that's going to be important in the future. That would allow you guys to have alignment on that as opposed to just sales going, no, that's wrong. And it is fun to do that, but with AI you can really have even more, and it may be a whole day just to do attractiveness with a group of people that are really trying to figure out priorities.
Yeah. And also, sometime, not necessarily for this tool, but generally, one of the other things about AI that is a real boon is everything. No, no, we've learned this since COVID to how to do these things remotely. But AI is now allowed us to take some tools that previously we thought have to be done in the classroom because of the degree of guidance and back and forth and discussion goes on. Now these become much more usable, almost as pre-work. Maybe not attractiveness. That is a little bit more subtle, but there's a lot of tools that we now have the ability to do a lot of pre-work and make the actual face-to-face classroom so much more effective. I mean, it really gets to the heart of the issue so much quicker, because of exactly what you're saying, Mary. These things are just made more efficient. They're just made better by AI.
Yeah. Sean, I want to add to that. Some of the groups that we worked with, attractiveness has, let's say, 5 criteria. And sometimes we are more, qualitative in what those 5 things are. But if you have AI, you can use yardsticks for each of those and define it even more. So, for example, we like to work with groups that, with markets that are growing. So then you can use AI to say, give us what the level of, extreme growing is and what, lower or, not much growth is. And you can build out those yardsticks so that you have even more metrics to be able to rate each of those. So that actually works.
Yeah, totally.
The other thing I love about attractiveness is that you can swap in and out other axes. Like we tend to put attractiveness on the y-axis, and you can put other factors on the x-axis to really, as Mary said earlier, gain a lot of consensus around things. We've put what how attractive even a project is to us to get done for our internal external constituencies, and we put on the x-axis how ready we are to execute on this project. We have been doing a lot of work with teams that actually service other internal teams at their own companies. You might call them staff departments. They're in charge of things like healthcare economics, or they're in charge of things like internal analytics, and they're in charge of things like medical affairs capabilities. These are some things, some projects that we're working on. And we use that attractiveness quite a lot to, get people to come to an agreement on what they should be focused on. What are the things? If you're in an internal staff position like that, everybody wants to be your top priority. Every one of your internal constituents feels like they have the right to say, why am I not the number one thing that you are working on? And what attractiveness and whatever you swap in on the other axis allows you to do is, as a team, kind of come to an agreement on what that formula is, and make some decisions on the team of what you really truly are gonna prioritize, what best supports your mission within the organization. And that's something we're doing a lot of. And we leverage AI to do that, but either with or without AI, these are important things that we're finding that our tools are allowing us to really help organizations to do, to market themselves better to their internal customers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
think
like
that's the
that,
thing.
Tom. That's right. I forgot. I mean, we use it in so many different ways, but you're right. That really is a clarifier when we use it. One of the examples that I have is I belong to a club that we just did a membership satisfaction survey, which is pretty normal. And, we've had like, I don't know, 500 people. And as we started to look at the data on the surface, it looked like, there was always the normal stuff that you need to fix. But when we went back in and said, let's look at the data and get segments for the membership, it all of a sudden started to open up some ideas. So we found, there were 5 segments. And then within those segments, we started to say, you can't exclude anyone, but which ones are more attractive and what's important to them, all of a sudden we were like, oh, this segment over here is pretty satisfied. They like status quo. This group over here, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. They're not satisfied and they're high revenue to our club. So we need to pay attention to them. So it really gave us a dimension that I think on the surface, if you just took it at face value, you would have said, oh, membership satisfaction is okay. But when you look deeper, you go, some are really happy and some are not happy. And which ones do we want to put more efforts into? So that's, you, like I said, you can use it for anything. You can use it for work. You can use it for personal, use it for your things that you are involved in, your side hustles.
Yeah.
So we hope
Your,
to try some of this.
your
Any closing
spouse,
thoughts, guys?
your spouse or your house. I just want to emphasize, I'm probably going to say this at the end of every one of these, that the tools that we've developed and evolved over decades are powerful, and they, before the advent of AI, were best in class. Sorry for the sort of self promotion here, but they really are. AI has just enhanced it. It's a multiplier. And I know I keep banging on, but AI doesn't replace anything. AI doesn't make someone into a strategic marketing genius without a framework and a process to an extent. What it does is it adds this level of expertise, whether that's coaching, whether it's brainstorming, whether it's guidance, whether it's just going into a lot of data to pull out the essence. It's a partner, and it needs something to partner with. So as much as we're massive fans and we've literally been blown away by the power of these tools, I always remind ourselves it's only because they're attached to what was an existingly powerful framework that has now just gone up a notch because it's been enhanced. It's a multiplier, not a replacement. And I'll probably say it 3 or 4 more times in these podcasts, and then I'll stop.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Bye.